Since the very beginning of Freemasonry, charges against the order for blasphemy and heresy and Satan worship have pervaded as far back as the 1500s. So today what I wanted to discuss is where that came from, what it means, how accurate is it? Do Freemasons hold rituals in their lodges to the devil? I'm going to reveal all of the secrets today. I am the Desert Viking, Esoteric Freemason, Knight Templar. Today's discourse comes from out of my Entered Apprentice, a packet where we discuss Lucifer and the devil. And why would I want to talk about Lucifer and the devil? Not for the sake of talking about that subject, but because it is something that any Mason is going to hear. In fact, it's probably the most common comment that I receive on this channel is someone will coast in and do the whole, you're the devil, you worship Satan, Lucifer, Jesus is Lord, etc., etc. That's a very common comment. And if you're on social media, you'll see people plastering all that about as well. So as such, it's always good to try to get to the root of where those comments come from. And that's what we're going to do today. Today's sponsor that doesn't pay me is Gatorade Zero, because it's dry in the desert and you need to stay hydrated. All right. Freemasonry and Lucifer. Ooh. As you can see here, the big scary picture of Baphomet next to me. Everyone sees that. Just looking at that image alone is enough to incite all kinds of feelings in people. Knowing where that picture came from and what it actually represents changes the context instantly. But we'll discuss that a little bit, this image right here, and what it actually represents, which actually is not the devil. It's just been kind of commandeered to be such for the past, 140 odd years since Eliphas Levi put it out in his book, and it got latched on to be that. Now, I have heard charges of Freemasons being devil worshippers since I was a little kid. I was raised Roman Catholic, and then my family, they split off into Assemblies of God evangelicism. So I was raised hard-nosed religious. And as far as back as I can remember, Freemasonry was considered along the same lines as heavy metal music and Dungeons and Dragons, it was a tool of the devil to trap people. And there are even chick tracts about Freemasonry and how it is a tool of Baphomet and Baal and all these other diabolical beings. So this all starts with the Knights Templar, as many things in Freemasonry do. Whether or not you believe that the Knights Templar and Freemasons are connected or not is up for you to decide. For me personally, from what I have read and thought on and seen, I do believe there is a fairly strong connection. One of the things that the Templars were accused of was worshiping or idolizing this little head that they called the Baphomet. And as far as I can tell, that's the first time the Baphomet comes into play. Now, if you try to do a search on where Baphomet originates, you're going to get a lot of different sides of the story or different answers. And it is frustrating. It is frustrating. I still have not found the root of it. I believe the story I'm about to tell you is the root of it, but I know some more celebrated personalities believe that it is based in other things. No one, as far as I can tell you the actual where this word came from. Baphomet is not, I believe in the Goetia, Baphomet's not even present because it's not the name of the devil. It's not. Now, Baphomet, how it originated, as far as I'm concerned and from what I've read, and the thing that makes the most sense to me is that the Knights Templar, we know, were Gnostic, and Gnostics revere one of their, for lack of a better word, deities. Not deities, probably not the right word. but it's Sophia. Sophia was the feminine form of the Trinity, and she was the one that birthed the demiurge who ended up creating the earth, and the demiurge being Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, the Old Testament God. And the Gnostics have her in kind of a she is the feminine side of creation, as it were. The twin of Jesus, who is the masculine version. And then in the triangle, it comes up to God the Father. Now, of course, the Roman Church long ago removed the feminine aspect from the supernal and replaced it with the Holy Spirit. So to say that Sophia is a part of the supernal triangle is blasphemy and heresy. And, a couple hundred years ago, I would be killed for that, for saying that. And many, many people were. So the Templars, being Gnostics, revered Sophia. But they couldn't obviously prance around talking about that. So they had to kind of disguise that. And to do that, they used something called the Atbash cipher. And the Atbash cipher simply swaps letters out in Hebrew. So, for example, there are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. The Atbash cipher would swap Aleph, which is the first, with Tau, which is the last character. It would swap Bet, the second character, with the second to last character, and swap the third character for the third to last character, and so on and so forth. And that was a very simple cipher. If you didn't know it was ciphered, you wouldn't know any better. Now, the Hebrew word for Sophia, when you apply the Atbash cipher to it, comes out to be, can you guess? Baphomet. So, Baphomet was a ciphered version of the word for Sophia to conceal it from the church. The church, not knowing what Baphomet was, assumed Baphomet, that was one of the charges that the church levied against Templars, that the Baphomet was this evil, diabolical thing. It was a devil, it was a demon, whatever. And so from there, the legend grows, and the Baphomet became a devil, or the devil, or one of the devils. And throughout the Middle Ages, all the way up until this picture came out in the mid-1800s, Baphomet was transcribed as a demonic figure from the Knights Templar being accused of idol worshipping the Baphomet. And so it went off in this other direction. And now there's other, like Baphomet comes from Latin and Baphomet comes from Greek, and it's this, that, and the other. And those are all stabs in the dark. I firmly believe that because if you apply the Atbash cipher to Sophia in Hebrew, it does come out to be Baphomet. That is the thing that makes the most sense to me. And then it suddenly took on a legend of its own. Okay. In the mid-1800s, Eliphas Levi, who was a Freemason and kickstarted the occult, the new wave of the occult in the 1800s that would go until the early quarter of the 20th century, he went ahead and he created an image of the Baphomet. And this image, this is what he says. I'm gonna read you a translation from the book that this comes from, which is the Transcendental Ceremonial Magic book that he wrote describing the different magical traditions as he understood them from the 1800s, as taught to him by his teacher. And all this stuff comes again from books upon books upon books, layering themselves through the Middle Ages. So this is how he describes the Baphomet. The goat on the frontispiece carries the sign of the pentagram on the forehead, with one point at the top, a symbol of light, his two hands forming the sign of occultism, the one pointing up to the white moon of Chesed, the other pointing down to the black one of Geburah. Now, Chesed and Geburah are Kabbalistic terms, Jewish mysticism. The pentagram is a piece of geometry that has nothing to do with devil worship. It's been around far, far, far longer than the Hebrew version of Satan. You can find it on Sumerian artifacts, which are the first recognized civilization of humankind. And, of course, the word occult has been demonized and bastardized to become this evil word that you think of sinister, dark cultists walking around in the shadows, worshiping the devil and raising the dead and all that other stuff. And it's funny to me that the light has been demonized. That knowledge has been demonized. That is insidious and genius all at the same time, to make your people fear and hate the light. Seems very backwards to me, but here we are. Anyhow, this sign expresses the perfect harmony of mercy with justice. His one arm is female, the other male, like the ones of the androgyne of Kunrath, the attributes of which we had to unite with those of our goat because he is one and the same symbol. The flame of intelligence shining between his horns is the magic light of the universal balance, the image of the soul, elevated above matter, as the flame, while being tied to matter, shines above it. Why is he in the form of a goat? Because the goat represents the natural spirit of the earth. It's animalistic. In fact, you'll see other images of Baphomet with like eagle's claws and scorpion's tails and whatnot. And those are all astrological references. This is an animal, a nature spirit, basically, is what he's driving. And one of the keys, they call it the arcanum, one of the keys is unity. And what that means is simply this. You have the black and the white, the dark and the light, and they unify. That's what the caduceus symbolizes. They're unified. You unify those two aspects. Tree of life, tree of death. You have to unify those two aspects. Boaz and Jachin. You have to unify those aspects. Unity. That's what the flame represents. Unity. You have to bring those together. He concludes, the beast's head expresses the horror of the sinner whose materially acting, solely responsible part has to bear the punishment exclusively. The soul is insensitive according to its nature and can only suffer when it materializes. The rod, standing instead of genitals, symbolizes eternal life. The body covered with scales, the water, the semicircle above it, the atmosphere, the feathers following above, the volatile. Humanity is represented by the two breasts and the androgyne arms of this sphinx of the occult sciences. If you take the time to learn some Hebrew and go find yourself a root copy of the holy text of Genesis, you will see that the name for God is both a masculine and feminine word, indicating in the original Hebrew, before it gets translated to Latin and then later English, that in the holy text, God is both male and female. God is genderless. Does that surprise anyone? Is that shocking to know that God is genderless? No, because male and female are parts of the triangle, and together we form the whole. Now, it's been beaten out of us for the past 2,000 years that God is only male. He's the bearded dude in the sky, right? But in the holy text, if, again, learn some Hebrew, go look at the book of Genesis and find that word, and you will see what it is, a masculine and feminine word. Thus, to depict the natural force as both male and female is what is being partially here displayed here. So that big scary image has nothing to do with Satan or the devil at all. But here we are today. Superstitions and legends have led us to the point of where we are with the Baphomet. Now, that's the Baphomet. We talked a little about the Atbash cipher. You can go look all this stuff up. You can do all the research you want. It's out there. Check it out. Let's talk about Lucifer, my second favorite topic ever. Not because of the devil, but because of that word and how it's come to be what it means today. The word Lucifer, in some versions of the Bible, doesn't even exist at all. And in others, I believe in King James and several after, the word appears one time. And it appears one time to describe one of the kings of Babylon, who I believe took down the Temple of Solomon, Nebuchadnezzar. And it was used to describe Venus, the morning star. And from that point, somehow, in the Middle Ages, Lucifer became tied to the name of Satan as his name, the devil. Somehow, somewhere, I have not found this yet. Just one of my little rabbit hole quests is to find where this originated. Lucifer got tied to that concept. Now, if you go through some theological teachings, because if you ask that question, it is a common question, like Lucifer's not in the Bible, so where did this come from? You'll find a couple things where, in my opinion, they're stretching. So here's one, the book of Isaiah, chapter 14, verse 12. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? So to them, they're taking that exoterically, verbatim. That is the devil. He fell from heaven. That's his name, Lucifer. And actually, that's the word that's being used to describe Nebuchadnezzar. So that in that case, they're not even discussing Lucifer. There are pieces in the Bible where we have Christ describing Satan in Luke 10:18. I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. So they take that phrase and they apply it to the Old Testament. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? And they go, that proves it. His name is Lucifer. Anyhow, there's a couple. If you do some research on it, there's some other people that will talk about Satan is light. 2 Corinthians, which is a New Testament work, and no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. So because of that, exoteric concept is that anything that has to do with light is the devil. Now, if you read the Bible esoterically, which very few people do, then you realize that a lot of what's in the Bible is allegory and it's encoded. And in its original language is a lot of the New Testament was written in Greek and Hebrew and Coptic Egyptian, that there are a lot of different coded messages and alliterations and comparisons that are going to be made. That's what the true purpose of the Holy Writings was to transmit that information, but not in an outward way. So if you can't take the Bible literally if you're an esoteric. That by itself will cause people to go up into an uproar and say that I am an agent of the devil by saying that one thing. I'll let you be the judge of determining that for yourself. This is why a lot of esoterics don't talk about things like this. Lucifer itself comes from Latin, 2 parts, lux, meaning light, and fera, to bring, light bearer, to bring light. Before Christianity, before the main Abrahamic religions, we had the Greeks, and we had, of course, the Roman pantheon, which basically borrowed from the Greeks, and the Egyptians. And we had Osiris and Horus, the light bringers. They were the heroes of the story. And since the Abrahamic faith came about and Jehovah showed up on the scene, light became evil. Again, think of the caduceus, how the snake twists itself around the pole. At one point it's good, and at the other point it's evil, and then it's good, and then it's evil, and so on and so forth. If you stretch all the way back to Sumerian legend, you have Enki and Enlil. Enlil is likened to Jehovah. Enki is the savior of mankind, who's also likened to the serpent. So he was the savior. And in fact, in gematria, in Hebrew, serpent and savior have the same numeric value. And then they traded spots. Set, the serpent of Egyptian lore, was the devil, evil. And Osiris, the light bringer, was good. So watch, if you wind your way up religion, you watch them trade spots. And here we are today where the light bringer, light, is evil. And that's one of the quote-unquote proofs that Freemasonry is of the devil, because we talk about the light. We talk about illuminating the world. We talk about being the point of light, or being points of light individually. And all that is true. We do talk about that. But none of that has to do with the devil. But according to, everyone else who knows that you're just not high enough rank. And once you get high enough rank, you learn that the light is the devil. So they say that the fact that we talk about the light so much is a proof that we are really in league with the devil. Okay, so that's nonsense. But that's one of the roots of where Freemasonry is the devil. All right. Let's see, where else? Okay, so then we know other proofs that Freemasonry is of the devil. Well, there was a little, we'll call it scandal, in the late 1800s. There was an individual named Taxil, And Taxil wanted to make fun of Freemasonry and the Catholic Church, both. So what Taxil did was, this was like 1880s, 1890s. He was a writer, and he wrote all these fantastic books about the evil Freemasons, and filled it with a bunch of fictional garbage. And people bought it up that this was real. And he made it more and more outlandish, and people still bought it up, and they thought it was real. To the point where he came out and he had a press conference, their version of a press conference back then, and said, "Hey, I was just making this stuff up. I was making this more ridiculous. I had hopes that humanity would eventually say this can't be real, but you all proved me wrong, and I made a whole lot of money off your stupidity." That's basically what he said. So he came out and admitted this was all a hoax. But a lot of the things he wrote still appear today as truth, and they're referenced. There have been books written about Freemasonry and the devil that reference his works. There have been chick tracts that have been produced that reference his works. The man came out and said it was a hoax, and it's still latched onto as a reference of truth. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how people operate. This is how humans operate. If they want to believe something, they will. Okay, so that's another proof. The Taxil hoax, he was a hoax, and then a lot of the stuff he said never happened. And then we have the Albert Pike proof, Morals and Dogma. Now, Morals and Dogma. Albert Pike was one of the more celebrated Freemasons of the 1800s. He was a philosopher, amongst other things. And he helped consolidate and standardize the Scottish Rite. This is where Masons can be up to the 32nd degree, and then they have a 33rd degree honorary title. No, there is no special ritual that you learn and get when you're the 33rd degree Mason. It is an honorary title given to those brothers who have dedicated their lives, and it takes a long time to achieve, and often is awarded posthumously to those men. Now, let's look at here. So what you'll see quoted. Well, let's just go with the original quote. This is the original quote that they talk about. This is proof. Because he mentions the name Lucifer, that obviously means that he worships the devil. I really, really am sad that we don't teach logic. We really need to. But here's the quote. "The apocalypse is, to those who receive the 19th degree, the apotheosis of that sublime faith which aspires to God alone and despises all the pomps and works of Lucifer." Interesting. Aspires to God alone and despises all the pomps and works of Lucifer. Lucifer the light bearer, strange and mysterious name to give to the spirit of darkness. Lucifer the son of the morning. Is it he who bears the light, and with its splendors intolerable blinds feeble, sensual, or selfish souls? Doubt it not. Okay. So he's going on a little tangent. He's just musing on the devil and how and he's warning people not to fall off into the dark path. That's what he actually said in the 19th degree in Morals and Dogma. Now, what you will read, this is the quote that they will show you that does not exist. It's a lot different. Check this one out. Proof. "To you, sovereign grand inspector generals of the 33rd degree, we say this, that you may repeat it to the brethren of the 32nd, 31st, and 30th degrees, the Masonic religion," which there is no religion, "should be by all of us initiates of the high degrees maintained in the purity of the Luciferian doctrine. Yes, Lucifer is God." And they quote that, or attribute that quote to Albert Pike, and in the Morals and Dogma of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry in 1871. That quote was never written and is not in Morals and Dogma. But that's proof. Okay, so another one you can discard. That's blatant nonsense. Another one, Manly P. Hall. Manly P. Hall wasn't even a Mason until the 1950s, but he wrote a lot of stuff. And in the 1920s, he wrote a book called The Lost Keys of Freemasonry. So this, again, is about 30 years before he actually became one. He studied and he knew his stuff, don't get me wrong. He also wrote like he came from the early 20th century and used very flowery prose. And because of that, he uses the word Luciferian, which again, people latch on to that word. Once they see that word, they're like a dog with a bone, and they just come right in on that. Oh, he said Lucifer. That must mean you're the devil. Here is his quote, and this is actually written in the book. When the Mason learns that the key to the warrior on the block is the proper application of the dynamo of living power, he has learned the mystery of his craft. The seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands, and before he may step onward and upward, he must prove his ability to properly apply energy. Okay, when you take that whole paragraph out of context, sure, you can be like, wow, they've got the energies of Lucifer. No, Lucifer is obviously the devil. When you look at the entire context of that writing, he is discussing the earth energies, the base energies that the brother of the craft has to learn to properly apply energy to transmute into something greater. Because being of the earth, that is Luciferian. He chose to use the word Luciferian not to describe the devil and say that we have demonic energies in our hands, but that we must transmute that energy into something better, to properly apply energy to make it better, to move beyond it. Because as all people on the earth are, we, original sin and all, right? If you follow that, you are all, until you've done what you need to do, still of Luciferian energy. Now, a lot of people disagree with that, and they will, and I've been in those discussions, and I will not really entertain those any longer, but they will go full bore and assert, no, you're just reaching, and that those mean Luciferian energy. Those mean, Albert Pike wrote about the devil. You can't argue with people whose minds will not be changed, and there's no point. But those are where those come from. Now, all of those aside, those are common ones. The number one reason why people think that Freemasonry is the devil. One simple word. And that word is dogma. Because Freemasons, we accept all brothers regardless of your political or religious affiliation. And that has always been a no-no to a lot of people. Because people like their camps. They like their groups. They like their group think. You see it with politics all the time. If you're not on one side, you're the enemy. Today, more than ever, we see that. Religion's always been like this, at least for the past 2,000 years. If you don't follow my religion, you're going to hell. That's what they say. That's how I was brought up. It was even so dogmatic where I grew up that it wasn't enough to be Christian. You had to be the right particular brand of Christianity. When we were Catholics, my parents used to scoff at the evangelicals as being a cult, of being weirdos. When they became evangelical, they then scoffed at the Catholic Church as being a cult. I remember that very well because I remember that conversation I had. It's like, so everyone is a cult unless they're in your particular brand of whatever you believe, and then it's fine. And I don't remember the answer. It wasn't an acceptable answer. It was something along the lines of, at least they still believe in Jesus. The thing I notice about dogma is that you're going to tend, people by and large, overwhelmingly, pick the dogma that is instilled in them when they're growing up, where they're born. So the geography that you were born in dictates which dogma you are going to adhere to and follow. If a evangelical Christian of the Midwest United States were born in Iran, they would be a devout Islamic cleric, and vice versa. Because Freemasons accept Judaism, Hindus, Muslims, other Christians, they attack each other. Like I said, they'll get on the Mormons for not being real. The list goes on. Because you accept that, you are therefore an agent of the devil. And you'll see a lot of people post that stuff on social media. You'll see, I see it all the time in the box here. I'm sure this video right here will generate several fun messages to me about only Jesus is Lord. And that's great if you believe that. I'm not here to dispute that. I'm a Christian. I'm a Gnostic. But I also believe that multiple paths lead up the same mountain and that there's multiple mountains. And God has many faces. He has to have many faces because humanity is so different. But dogma is about control. Dogma is about controlling through fear. How many people died because they believed in the wrong version of God, right? So many. And that's probably one of the reasons why I love being in Freemasonry, is that we're open to all religious faiths and political affiliations. So that's how you unify. Because we are so weak while we are split apart. And it's intentional. All of this is intentional. For power purposes, to keep everyone split up, to keep each other at each other's throat, not paying attention to what really matters. They throw things like religion and politics out there. So, those are the main reasons why Freemasonry is the devil that I've seen. There might be more. Those are the ones I see constantly. Dogma being the number one, that because you allow other faiths into your lodge, you are therefore a servant of the devil. You can throw bonus points at we're a secret society and do secret things and therefore it's evil. That originated from the church. They did not like the Freemasons having things that they weren't aware of because they thought the Freemasons were trying to organize a revolt against the church, which never happened, which was never a thing, but they were afraid of that, losing their power. To this day, Catholics are still not permitted to become Freemasons because it conflicts with the tenets of Catholicism, which essentially says only Catholicism is correct and everything else is wrong. I'm not going to debate or discuss anyone else's beliefs. If that's what they believe, great. But it's always important for me, at least, to know where the origins of this stuff comes from so that I can make my own decision. And I reject dogma 100%. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was useful for you. If you have any comments, please leave them below. I look forward to the dogma messages that I know are going to be sent my way. But, you know, conversation's how we come together. So I would rather come together than continue where we are today, which is weaker than we've probably ever been. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll talk to you soon.